don't understand why he has to plead the fifth since he already had immunity from that pardon. But you're now calling for Dr. Fauci to face jail time. Tell us what happened and your takeaway.
Well, listen, the reason he had to plead the fifth is his alternative was lying to Congress, and that's something, sadly, Dr. Fauci has done repeatedly. What has become public now is his private diaries, and his private diaries reveal that he was lying to Congress and lying to the American people day after day, week after week, month after month throughout the...
Senator Ted Cruz just turned up the pressure on Dr. Anthony Fauci. According to the source material, the answer is a definite yes. Cruz isn't simply criticizing Fauci, he's arguing that there should be criminal accountability. He claims Dr. Anthony Fauci should face prosecution for allegedly lying to Congress about the origins of COVID-19 and his role in supporting school shutdowns. That's a serious accusation, and it's now front and center in the political debate.
The Senate Homeland Security Committee. He pled the Fifth Amendment 111 times. He would not answer one question surrounding the origins of COVID-19 and the government's response to it and his response. Joining me now is Texas Senator Ted Cruz. He is the chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee. Senator, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria. Great to be with you.
I want to get your take on all of this. First of all, I don't understand why he has to plead the fifth since he already had immunity from that pardon. But you're now calling for Dr. Fauci to face jail time. Tell us what happened and your takeaway.
Well, listen, the reason he had to plead the fifth is his alternative was lying to Congress, and that's something, sadly, Dr. Fauci has done repeatedly. What has become public now is his private diaries, and his private diaries reveal that he was lying to Congress and lying to the American people day after day, week after week, month after month throughout the entire COVID pandemic. For example, in his diaries, he noted in January, at the beginning of the pandemic, that it was obvious that COVID did not originate in the wet market. And yet he went on national television. He told Congress, COVID came from the wet market. It did not come from the Wuhan Institute for Virology. It was not a leak from a Chinese government lab. Now, there's a reason for that, which is Dr. Fauci was responsible for releasing funds that funded what I believe was the research, the gain-of-function research that modified and created the COVID virus. So he was covering his own rear end when he was doing that, but he was deliberately lying. And you look at his diaries also that show just a megalomaniac. I mean, he was just, he described himself as a rock star on TV. He was interested in being in TV rather than saving people's lives. And so he faced a challenge because, yes, the pardon that Joe Biden corruptly gave him to cover up from his criminality, that was retrospective. That covered past crimes. But if he went to the Senate and lied again yesterday, I believe the Department of Justice would prosecute him for lying to Congress under oath. And so Dr. Fauci was not willing to tell the truth, that he was a craven liar who destroyed jobs, who destroyed lives, who destroyed the future of kids. Another lie that he revealed in his diary is he was reveling in convincing Democrats in New York and California to shut down schools. He was thrilled that he convinced them to shut down schools. And then Dr. Fauci went on TV and said, oh, I wasn't for the shutdowns. I didn't urge anyone to shut down schools. That was a lie. And Maria, I think 10 years from now, social scientists are going to look back at the school shutdowns during the COVID pandemic and view it as the most inexplicable, disastrous public policy decision in modern times. We now have the data that the learning loss due to Democrats shutting down schools for over a year is the highest that has ever been recorded. And the racial gap, the gap between African American and white students, the gap between Hispanic and white students grew more due to the Democrat shutdowns, due to Dr. Fauci shutdowns, than it ever has in the history of America. That's why he pleaded the fifth, because he couldn't defend his own conduct.
That's unbelievable. But you know, what you're saying this morning in terms of how he lied repeatedly, Rand Paul said that also. I had him on just last week, and he said the same thing. So how is it possible that he keeps getting away with this? I mean, Senator, isn't lying to Congress a felony? And yet, where's the accountability here? And then I've got to ask you, in terms of your own legal analysis, is that pardon legitimate? If it was done by the auto pen, could it be challenged?
Well, let's take that one at a time. Yes, lying to Congress is a felony. It is a felony punishable by a long prison term. The reason he wasn't prosecuted is because Joe Biden and the Democrats agreed with his lies. They wanted him to lie. They've elevated him to the position of folk hero. You know, I tweeted out yesterday, James Tallarico, the extreme left-wing Democrat running for Senate in Texas, he tweeted out at one point this action figure. He had Dr. Fauci as this like superhero. I did have to ask, gosh, if you push the lever, does it plead the fifth? Which he did 111 times. The Democrats, they wanted him to lie. They agreed with his lie. Why? Because let's take the school shutdowns. You have Randy Weingarten, the radical left-wing president of one of the biggest teachers unions, who was for the shutdowns and was advocating for the shutdowns. And understand, the Democrat Party did not give a damn that they were hurting kids. They didn't care at all, because for them it's about power and staying in power. So he should have been prosecuted. On your question, if the pardon is valid, that is an undecided legal question. I think there's a real argument. So constitutionally, the Department of Justice the Office of Legal Counsel has determined the president does not need to physically sign a pardon to make it valid. He can direct that it be signed, and the Department of Justice has said that is valid. The real question on the auto pens is, did Joe Biden have any awareness? You know, of all the pardons he signed at the end, do you know the one that he hand signed? That would be his son, Hunter Biden. Right. It was the only one he hand signed. And I have publicly called on my podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz, for the Department of Justice and the White House to examine, is there any paper trail indicating that Joe Biden authorized the pardon of Fauci? Because if he didn't, that pardon is invalid. And I hope this Department of Justice will bring a prosecution and make the legal argument that a White House staffer trying to cover up every Democrat henchman, and the pardons Biden issued were vast and unprecedented, including to his entire family, were not valid if the president did not himself directly authorize them.
Unbelievable. This is just extraordinary. All right, I want to get to other topics, because I saw you on your podcast talking about Mamdani and talking about all of these radical lefties that I want to get your take on. And I also got to get your take, have to get your take on what can get done. President Trump is keeping the pressure on John Thune, urging him to stay in session until the Save America Act is passed. Around a dozen Republican senators say they're willing to stay in Washington and work through recess until the election integrity bill passes. Senator, you said the Senate should do anything and everything, including working through the August recess to get that done. You have 7 legislative days to do so. We just saw in New Jersey 6,600 illegals registered to vote. The governor, Mikey Sherrill, told us hundreds of them actually did vote. Do you think you can get the Save America Act over the finish line before the recess or before the midterms even?
Look, we have to do everything humanly possible to pass the Save America Act. I'm an original sponsor of the Save America Act. For months, I've been making the argument to my colleagues, we need to get this passed to preserve election integrity, to stop rampant voter fraud. As you noted, over 6,000 illegal voters registered in New Jersey. The Democrats, that's how they stay in power. You look at the debacle in California. They may still be counting votes in California. Democrats want illegal aliens to vote. That's why they oppose the Save America Act. We need to do everything humanly possible. What I've been arguing to my colleagues is we need to force the Democrats to do a talking filibuster. Not just raise a finger and say, I filibuster, but stand up and talk and talk and talk. Think Jimmy Stewart in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Or remember back to the 21 hours that I filibustered on the Senate floor against the disaster that was Obamacare. We need to make the Democrats do that until they can talk no longer, and then we should pass the Save America Act. Absolutely, we should stay here through August. We should keep going until we get it done. And look, it's a real press. Do we get 50 Republicans to stand together? I am fighting tooth and nail to make that happen. I'm grateful for the president fighting. We need to get this done.
Yeah, and real quick, on your podcast yesterday, you talked about this radical left list that Zoran Mamdani is not just going after billionaires. He doxed nearly 1 million New Yorkers. He put their names in that list and identified their homes to be under review. I thought it was a $5 million cap, and now he's putting people's in there that have homes that are valued at $1 million. I didn't understand what that list was about yesterday, Senator.
Look, that list was about persecuting and attacking those he views as his political enemy. That was a list he doxed nearly 1 million New Yorkers. The intention was to have radical left-wing activists harass them, attack them, and I believe that was an invitation to physical violence. We are going to see, tragically, you look at the leftist who celebrated when the United Healthcare CEO was shot on the streets. You have idiot Marxists who wear T-shirts with the murderer on it. You have idiot Marxists who have tattoos of the murderer on it. And look, Mondami, I think it's important for people to understand. This man is not merely a socialist, which is bad enough. He is a Marxist. He is a full-on communist. And this is what communists do. Look, as you know, my family came from Cuba. Communism is not theoretical. It's not abstract. My family was imprisoned and tortured by communists. And I think America's largest city, governed by a radical communist who is persecuting his enemies, that's really dangerous.
Unbelievable. All right, we've got some economic data to get to that's just breaking. We so appreciate your time this morning, Senator. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.
Always a pleasure to see you, Senator Ted Cruz, and our condolences to your dear friend, Lindsey Graham. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Cruz also points to Fauci's decision to invoke the Fifth Amendment 111 times, arguing this happened because Fauci could not reconcile his private diary entries with his public testimony. Whether supporters see that as self-protection or critics see it as damaging, Cruz clearly believes it raises major questions. And then comes another twist. Cruz questions whether the presidential pardon granted to Fauci was actually authorized by the president or issued by staff, suggesting that issue deserves closer scrutiny. But the discussion didn't stop with Fauci. Senator Ted Cruz also pushed for the immediate passage of the Save America Act, urging Senate leaders to stay in Washington through the August recess to address what he describes as election integrity concerns. The conversation then shifted to New York politics, where Cruz criticized Zoran Mamdani and what he described as a radical effort to target political opponents. Drawing from his family's experience in Cuba, Cruz warned that socialism and Marxism are gaining influence in American government. Whether you agree with Senator Ted Cruz or not, one thing is clear: these issues are becoming a major battleground in Washington. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with BENJOE TV for more political analysis.